Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. As the US stock markets have been declining, we've all been waiting for areas where a bounce may start. So today I'd like to have a look at what happened on Friday to show how MTPredictor coped with that bounce. But as usual, let's start with our risk disclaimer and remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades are actually taken, they're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. Remind you there's a risk of loss in trading and investing. We will be looking at some losing trades today. It's important to remind everybody that losses can and will and do unfold. It's important that you accept this because that's an important part of trading. Right, let's move forward now. Let's have a look at the ES. And this is what unfolded on Friday the 9th of February. The market carried on down, so as we normally do, we go to the higher time frame charts. The higher time frame would be a time frame between 3 and 5 time frames higher. So if you're trading a 3-minute chart, the higher time frame would be the 15-minute. If you're say trading a 15-minute Forex, the higher time frame would be the hourly. If you're trading daily charts, the higher time frame would be the weekly. So if we go back to before yesterday had even started, so if we go back to around here somewhere on Thursday, you'll see that we had a major pivot low come in here. So we go to that, hover over that pivot low, and we do a decision point. This was an area of potential potential support that's on the chart in advance. So if we turn trading mode off, you can see what happened on the ES. The ES actually came down and actually did make a low here but early in the day, but actually carried on down a bit later in the day. So I want to have a look at this situation first. You can see around about here where a low looked like it was in the process of coming in. It's always important to look at these trade setups and analysis at the time to see what would have been happening at the time rather than with the benefit of hindsight. Because it'd be easy to say, oh look, we had some buy setups, isn't that great? But we have to go back and look at what it would have looked at without the benefit of hindsight. So you can see here's our 15-minute DP. There was a sell set up here that was on the way down to that 15-minute DP, but that was against a MTP blue trend, so would have only been for the more experienced users among you. That did turn out to be a nice trade, but that's not the one I want to look at. The one I want to look at is a losing trade, and it's in here. Can you see there's a history triangle there? So if I use again our training mode, and I go back to that bar there, you can see that actually there was a TS3 buy setup. Now at the time that looked to be a good buy setup with major support coming in here on the 15-minute chart, initial rally up, initial ABC correction down into a TS3 sell on a blue MTP trend. This looked to be a good trade setup. If I right mouse click, do the analysis, if anything this would probably want to be traded like a holy grail trade setup and go up to the typical wave 3 WPT. So that would be at the time looked to be a very good trade setup. If we now move forward, can you see how you'd just been taken in and then you would have been stopped out? So taken in and stopped out straight away. So this would have been a losing trade. As I said at the start, losses can and will and do happen, and it's important to look at them. But because we use correct position sizing, in this case less than 2% of a sample $20,000 account, that would have been a 1R or 1 risk unit loss. If I now turn trading mode off, you can see the market carried on down, did actually do a buy setup on the low here, but of course that was against our MTP red trend and was below our support level, so wouldn't have been one to consider. The market then carried rallying up here a bit later on in the day. But let's have a look at some of the other markets. The NQ was also carrying on down as well, and actually if we go to our 15-minute chart was really nice because there's a TS3 sell setup on the 15-minute chart. There were a couple of losing setups before that, you can see there again by our history triangle. You can place the analysis on these to see what the analysis would have been. Again, it's important to show losing trades, but it came up here, did a TS3 sell setup. The market went down into that target there, and that would have been a lovely 14R trade. That's why we like position sizing, because it doesn't avoid the losses, but when the losses come through they're kept small, but not just small in dollars, but small in relation to profits when the profits come through. But that's not the one I wanted to look at. The one I wanted to look at then was the YM. Let's now do as we did with the ES. We place the higher time frame support on. Exactly the same as the ES, we would have gone back to the major low there, right mouse click, do decision point, and this would have been the support zone on the chart in advance. As you can see, it didn't hit that support zone there. So if I come back to the 3-minute chart, let's have a look at this TS2 sell earlier in the day. This was on a black MTP trend, and as you can see, the market had not reached this support zone here. So this would have been a good one to take, whereas it wasn't in the ES. So that would have been a nice 2.3R profit, and as you can see already, that would have more than made up for the 1R loss we had on the ES. Let's clear that all off. There's the same setup there. That was a losing trade on the ES. Again, we wouldn't have taken that on the YM because our MTP trend was red and still on the way down into our support zone. But now comes the interesting part, because there was a DP buy setup here at our support zone. So this one would have been a good one to take if we placed analysis on. You can see it didn't actually turn out as anticipated. Actually, it was a very high risk trade. So if you had a $20,000 account, the risk to get into that trade would have been more than $430. So it had actually been for the bigger accounts only. Let's clear that all off. Again, we had another buy setup. This one here, this DP buy, and this, if I place analysis on, this one actually caught the very bar of the low of the day. Can you see that? At our 15-minute support zone, so nailed the low absolutely perfectly. This time the initial risk was acceptable and less than our 2% on our sample $20,000 account. The market then rallied up nicely into the first target. Actually, the market was also beyond our MTP strength band, which is our grey band there. So rather than coming out at the first target, you'd have probably used our ATR stop, which is our blue dots, to trail it, and you would have actually been stopped out just there for a nice 4.8R profit. Almost 5, but not quite 5R. So you can see that would have been a good trade. But again, more importantly, the profit would have been large in relation to the initial risk, and also in relation to the losing trade we had back here on the ES, which would have been a 1R loss. I can also see there was actually a history triangle that I didn't see earlier at that level there with our MTP trend was red. So whether you'd actually taken that or not would have been debatable because our YM was coming into support. If you had have taken this one, then that would have been just in there for a -1R loss. So just for correctness, that may have been a losing trade as well. But like I said, whether you'd have taken it or not would have been up to you, because the YM was coming off nice support there anyway. Even if you had, the loss would have been kept small at -1R. Again, that's small compared to our profits, which are large here. After being stopped out, we then got a TS3 HG or Holy Grail buy setup. MTP trend is blue, coming off our lovely support zone, nailing the low of the day. So you'd have been straight back in again for another long trade there. Didn't reach the target, which is not surprising because this is towards the end of the day. Should have probably come out on close about here, which would have been a nice 5.6R. So again, another trade, another profitable trade, but not just a profitable trade, but where the profit is large, not in just dollars, but in risk units. So a very, very nice trade there. So even though there were some losing trades, we had a look at one here, and we've had a look at some losing trades on the ES. The losses were kept small and at a -1R or 1R loss, but more importantly, we came in for a very good a couple of profitable trades here late in the day, with this TS3 Holy Grail buy setup there, which was a lovely one, and then also this DP buy here that came in at our 15-minute support zone. That's the important thing, at our 15-minute support zone, that actually nailed the very bar of the low of the day. So a good day there for MTPredictor, and a good example of how losses come through and profitable trades come through. But when the profits come through, the profits ideally are large, but not just large in dollar terms, but large in relation to the initial risk or the losses. And as we can see, if we go back to the 15-minute chart, there we were, nailing the very low of the day there very nicely with that 15-minute support zone on the YM. So a good day where MTPredictor had some great trades and particularly caught the bounce there later in the day on the YM.